So, Matt, we are 1 month away.
It's amazing.
A month away from the most consequential election, possibly, of our lifetimes. Is that an overstatement?
No, not at all. And we've been talking about it for 18 months, which is amazing, because normally presidential elections are quite a fast clip, the campaign. They really don't start until Labor Day, the first Monday in September. But this one has been going on since, mid 2023.
Yeah.
So we really are now, it's 5 minutes to midnight.
It's now coming at us like a train.
And, amazingly, surprisingly, Mr. Trump is getting crazier and crazier. So should we have a blast of him at a rally at Erie in Pennsylvania on Sunday?
Yeah, let's have a blast of crazy.
The liberal left wants to destroy him, and they want to destroy our country. If you had one day, like one real rough, nasty day with the drugstores as an example, where when they start walking out with, she created something in San Francisco, $950 you're allowed to steal. But they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, Congressman Kelly, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, then the city doesn't have money. It's a chain of events. It's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately.
Well, I think that's enough of that then. Yeah, so basically...
I want to point out Mike Kelly is no relation.
No relation.
Right up front.
Not a distant cousin even. So basically you have then a man who is tied with the Vice President, Kamala Harris, have a second term as president, recommending that there be a really violent day where you can do what you want to shoplifters. Yeah. That's where we're at.
Just to sort that out.
Hello, free world, right? This is the guy who, a month from now proposes to be elected as your leader.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think is
there any strategy here?
Yes, I think there are. Well, I mean, the thing with Trump is I'm always nervous of saying strategy because I think he runs on instinct, and I think those instincts often serve him well. They sometimes serve him terribly. Yeah. But I think what is going on here is that basically polarization in America is so great now. And he is very much a known quantity, of course, because he's been around as a politician now for 9 years, that according to some estimates, there's only really about 4% of voters now in play.
Really?
Yeah. So, which makes the whole thing almost sort of grotesquely narrow casting. What he's trying to do is it's order, not law, order, hence the very violent day, and immigration. Yeah. He will be zeroing in on those themes for the remaining month.
I presume those 4% are people in the middle, are they? Or not?
No, I think that for him anyway, and actually to a certain extent for Kamala Harris, the real battle now is turnout, not reach out.
Right.
Neither of them have anything to gain, really. I mean, certainly him. Trump has nothing to gain by suddenly pretending to be, hey, I'm really moderate, What he's trying to do is get the kind of, especially white working class voters who don't respond to polls and don't vote, they're low propensity, low information voters, to get out. And so these extreme, we saw it with the eating pets, eating dogs, things that get talked about. They sound crazy, and they are crazy, but
it's attention.
They get attention, and that's really, I think, what we're now going to be looking at for the last month is, Trump trades in the attention economy, not the evidence-based policy forum. And in fact, that's why he hates Project 2025 being as prominent as it has been. This is the think tank-based 900-page plan. Because he doesn't want to be associated with an elite project of proposals. He wants voters now to think of him as the guy who's going to close the border, deport undocumented immigrants, and I mean, this will never happen, but have a one day of violence. So paradoxically, what you might well see in the sort of final weeks is him getting more and more extreme as he tries to get those voters out. So it's a very it's an alarming prospect. There's no question about it.
And the reason it's so effective is it's almost impossible to combat, isn't it? Because you can't negate that kind of noise with rationality, can you?
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it, which is the Trump campaign logic is, we know that a lot of people are turned off by this, but they're already turned off. The main thing is it drowns out Harris demonstrating that she's presidential.
Yeah.
So she's done some great things recently, like, she went to the border, did all the right things. She's been alongside Zelensky. She made a very statesmanlike statement after the attacks on Israel this week. She's demonstrating that she can do the job. There's no question.
But you know what the problem is that's our view of that word.
Yes.
Presidential. Right now, Trump is redefining in the eyes of millions of people what presidential means.
See,
and people are looking at that and saying, no, this is the kind of presidential I want.
We think of the international rules-based order.
Yeah, exactly.
We think of law and order within the borders of America. And we think, well, we didn't know much about her, but in the very short space of time since Joe Biden dropped out of the race, she's had a great convention. She's framed the election beautifully. She completely trounced Trump at the debate, and she has demonstrated herself to be what we would, as you say, what we would call presidential. On the other side of the tracks, you've got Trump being Trump and offering a kind of retributive, migrant-hating, evangelical, Old Testament, apocalyptic vision of America. And unfortunately, there are a very large number of takers for this.
Yeah, and we've seen it before. And we're seeing it here in sort of diluted shades with Nigel Farage. And it's perfectly rational. It's perfectly rational if you are in a trailer park in the States, or you live in a council estate that you think is dysfunctional and falling to bits in the UK, for you to have come from what would be traditional working class, left-wing stock, to be saying, no, the hell with this. I'm going to go with that person who says it like I feel it.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. So it's a month to go. I mean, we really are now in the last chapter of this particular of the election itself, or the campaign itself, and the polls just are not shifting. She's a long way better placed than Biden was. Yeah, but
this race would be dead and buried.
Oh, it would be. We'd already be.
Biden
we'd be discussing who Trump was going to have in his cabinet.
Exactly
by this stage, right?
Exactly.
So one has to give her that. It is a tie, but on the other hand, by now, really, and you can sense the nerves on the Democrat side that the break ought to have happened, and it hasn't. She's doing well. Yeah. She's often ahead in national polls, but the New York Times, which has this sort of gold standard New York Times Siena College polls, they did a very detailed breakdown the other day, and they had her just clipping the Electoral College by 270 to 268. Now that's nothing. Wow. I mean, that means
within margins.
That means it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. And the question really is what's going to shift that, because there's nothing new about Trump. There is no new information. Everyone in the world, let alone America, knows everything there is to know about Trump. He's one of the, arguably the most famous person in the world, certainly amongst the most famous. Yeah. And so it's this game of inches. And I guess that brings us to the vice presidential debate, of which there's only going to be one, we think, between J.D. Vance, Senator from Ohio, the Republican vice presidential nominee, and Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who's Kamala Harris's running mate in New York.
Now, you stayed up and watched the whole thing.
I did, and I mean, it was remarkably civil, and it does show you how different these things are when Trump's not on the stage. The sense of kind of imminent craziness is, or indeed just craziness.
Almost like the sense of kind of potential physical threat.
No, I agree. Well, you remember when he loomed behind Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, exactly.
The absence of that was quite striking. So It was very civil.
Yeah, but too civil, right?
Well, they obviously quite like, I mean, as sometimes happens, they quite like each other. And amazingly, at the end, in the context of this very bitter race, their respective spouses came up and there was lots of hugging and handshaking. And then both of them went up to the moderators and shook hands. And there were lots of remarks in the course of the debate, which indicated, what appeared to be relatively genuine mutual respect. So I don't think they hate each other.
And there was a lot of stuff around, we'll shake hands. And coming from J.D. Vance, which I thought was interesting, was something we should explore. We said, if we lose, I wish Tim Walz all the best.
Exactly.
My prayers, blah, blah, blah. But Vance didn't say Trump lost.
Well, that was the one moment where Vance really got nailed, was at the very end.
Yeah.
Where he was asked, did President Trump lose the 2020 election? And he wouldn't say he did. Yeah. And Walz rose to the occasion and said, come on,
Yeah.
What Vance said was, there was a peaceful transfer on January the 20th. Yeah, but there wasn't much of a peaceful transfer on January the 6th, was there?
No, that's right. And it's at the end of the debate, and it's too late then, isn't it?
That's the problem, is that, Walz was really on point then, and that was a great, comeback.
Yeah.
And Vance looked ridiculous at that point. The problem is that for the rest of the hour and a half debate, Vance looked smoother than Walz, but also, God forbid, reasonable. He looked smooth. He was compassionate.
Yeah.
He also talked a lot of nonsense. And this was where I was thinking, come on, ask the question. So, he said things like, Vance said that he'd never backed a federal abortion ban, which is a lie, right? He's often banned a law. And he said, it's really important that we listen to the American public on this. I mean, Vance doesn't think that at all. He's a very, very, very strong Christian pro-lifer.
Yeah.
He said that America had the cleanest economy in the world. I don't think so. Walz let him off the hook on the whole Haitian pet eating scandal, which was very much Vance's work.
Yeah.
And Walz didn't chase him on that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were lots of other things, like Vance claiming that Donald Trump had saved Obamacare, which is, you only have to have minimal knowledge of American politics to know that that's the opposite of the truth, and that Trump tried to, spike Obamacare as often as he could, etc., etc. And it was just striking that Walz really wasn't up to the task. And because it's a game of inches, this was a missed opportunity, because Vance has, up until that debate, been a serious liability to the campaign, to the point where it's been widely speculated that Trump was thinking of ditching him.
Because normally the running mate is an absolute irrelevance, isn't it?
It is.
Normally.
It is. But because this is so tight,
this
everything
counts.
matters. Now,
but Vance has been far from an irrelevance, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
And actually, somebody on Radio 4 the morning after the debate said something which struck me as insightful, which is that Vance's brilliance is that he can actually explain Donald Trump's policies better than Donald Trump can.
That's exactly right. And so in this game of inches, you had this situation where Vance looked like a mistake.
Yeah.
They'd picked the wrong guy. They should have gone for someone much more in such as there is, the mainstream of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Someone to calm the horses a bit. But they'd gone for a real MAGA lunatic, someone who's, as they say now, extremely online, always appearing on right-wing podcasts and saying crazy things. And in the last few weeks, since the Republican convention, when his candidacy was announced, he's been a problem for them.
Yeah.
But in one night, I think it was Van Jones on CNN immediately afterwards, said that the problem was that the debate he used the phrase, they've sane-washed the crazy. Right?
Yeah.
And so it will be that much harder now to present Vance as even crazier than Trump. Trump without the laughs.
Yeah. Walz's job in that debate was not to appear like this civil Midwestern knucklehead gentleman, which is how he...
Yeah.
His job at some point had to be to say, you, mate, are a danger.
The opportunity for Walz was, I'm Coach Walz, as we endlessly have to refer to him. I am the representative of a Midwestern, folksy, sensible, gun-owning but gun-controlling Americana. And you, my crazy hillbilly turned, MAGA Yale-educated friend are a clear and present danger to the American way.
To everything we hold dear.
Yeah. And, these points, he should have just said, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
That's not true. You did say that. And he could have done so within his kind of, now, come on,
Yeah.
Come on, JD. Let's, I know you're a young man, but...
Yeah.
And he didn't. Yeah. And he looked startled. He kind of looked like someone's uncle who's been asked at short notice to officiate over the funeral of a much-loved hamster. He was kind of startled, looking startled into the camera,
How much... I'm trying to get into that analogy, yeah. How much of that do you think is just the sheer pressure that people are just to get through it without screwing up?
I think it's a measure of how unbelievably pressured it was, because actually he was over prepared. You can tell sometimes when people have done too much prep.
Yeah. He
was scribbling notes all the time. And what he should have done is just riffed.
Of course, but you can't.
He's natural, and he looked nervous. And it's really important not to exaggerate this. You're right to imply that a week from now, people won't be talking about this debate. All I'm saying is that it's probable this will be the last set-piece debate of any of the candidates, right? So this was an opportunity for the Harris-Walz ticket to demonstrate to the American electorate that if you think Trump's crazy, look at the sequel.
Yeah, and instead they've left with the impression, actually, it won't be so bad either way. Those 4% of people might be thinking that.
And also that he's not a liability, and in fact, he might well be. I mean, he clearly comes from the same ideological wing of American politics as Trump, but that he might be a useful restraining force. He might be a prime minister to Trump's president.
Right.
Now, I don't want to get too put too much weight on this, because it was only one night, and there's a lot's going to happen between now and November the 5th. But all I'm saying is that at the moment, the Democrats need absolutely everything to go their way.
Yeah.
And things have been going their way. And to be fair to both Walz and Harris, they have played a blinder, under very difficult circumstances. I mean, to take over a presidential candidacy in that time frame is incredibly hard. And to be honest, I mean, this is not much comfort, but whatever the result, what they did was historic.
So let's pause there, and we'll come back in a moment after a few short messages. And just get into a bit more detail on literally how these next 30 days are going to play out. This podcast is brought to you by the subscribers of the New European newspaper. The New European was set up to fight against the iniquities of Brexit, and we carry on fighting the good fight against corrosive nationalism and right-wing media to this day. Not only that, though, it's a great read every week, full of fantastic cultural articles, political insight from across the continent, great writing, including my dear friend Matt D'Ancona. So sign up and join the community of readers that have made the New European the fastest growing newspaper in Britain. We'll give you a free Bollocks to Brexit passport cover when you join from just £1 a week. For £1 a week, that's less than the price of a bottle of water, you get all of our digital content, archive, puzzles, the lot. For just £1 extra a week, you'll get the actual newspaper delivered to your door first class. You can't spend £2 a week better than that, folks. Go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2Matts. That's the number 2, MATTS. Sign up today and join the fastest growing community of newspaper readers in the country for a reason. So November the 5th is the night.
It is.
Pennsylvania is the state.
It's she had a good poll the other day where she was 4 points ahead, but there have been others which show it tied, so who knows.
There's a handful. It's 2, 3, 4 states,
basically,
right?
She needs to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the 2nd congressional district of Nebraska.
Does she need to win all of those states?
Yes.
Yeah, effectively.
Yeah, I mean...
which is the scale of the challenge.
Yes, I mean, it is very hard. I mean, it's hard for him too. His path more through the Sun Belt, I think. But if he takes Pennsylvania, it'll be very hard for her to make up the numbers.
Yeah.
So that's why this race has become almost sort of obsessively, neurotically about Pennsylvania, which is bizarre in a way. But so what has happened is that voting's actually already started. It was going to start in North Carolina, but then that got pushed back. And so it started on September the 11th in Alabama. So it's now underway.
Yeah.
Mail-in votes and so on. And what happens is as you say, there's about 161 or so million American voters registered, give or take. So they vote on November the 5th, and then the votes are counted, and because it's an electoral college, it's a very strange, very old, in many ways, very old-fashioned system. Each state actually nominates electors.
Yes.
So, if you've got 19 electors, they get nominated, and they have to be nominated by December the 11th, the electors. And by the December the 17th, they cast their votes. And this ought to be a formality, right? This is just, this state has gone to Trump or Harris, and you vote accordingly, and then those votes, the electors' votes, go to Washington, and they have to get there by Christmas. And then again, all of this has been sort of invisible for a long time because it didn't matter. It's just like, process, it's just process.
But brought it all back into play.
So and then of course the big day. Yeah. You won't be surprised, is January the 6th, 2025, where the new Congress that's just been elected will meet in joint session under the presidency of Kamala Harris, who will still be vice president, just as it did 4 years ago under Pence.
Of course, yeah.
And the result will be certified. And then on January the 20th, the winner and new vice president or the vice president-elect will be inaugurated. Yeah. That's the plan.
It is. I mean, it's worth reflecting. It's a bizarrely long time from the election to the uptake of power, isn't it?
It is, and it reflects the.
It's 10 weeks or 11
yes,
weeks.
There are several arguments. The modern argument put forward for the length of it is that actually it helps the new government to have time to
get its shit together.
Transition team in a way that we don't have. We literally have the Pickford's
like
van
the next day
driving, and
ours is just as mad in the other way, isn't it?
The other way, right? Yeah. But you're right to imply. I mean, that weird timetable goes back to the founding fathers and this strange belief that each state had to kind of meet and nominate its electors at the state capitol. It's very, very. And
it would have taken people 2 weeks to get to
exactly
Washington,
And Americans, love to mock Britain for its flummery and its old school rituals. Well, excuse me.
Yeah.
But this is now now we get to the really edgy stuff. The duration of that, it makes the whole system, as we discovered in 2020, 2021, extremely vulnerable to attack. And it's already under attack. I mean, even now, before polling day, about 90 lawsuits have been filed by the Republican Party. And they're all to do with, mostly concentrated, you'll be amazed to learn, in swing states and key counties. And they're all to do with forcing hand ballots, which of course is, can be an immensely time-consuming process.
What does that mean, forcing hand ballots?
Well, it means that you tell people to. I mean, a lot of this is automated. It means no, you've got to sit down. People have to sit down and count them again.
I see. Okay.
District by district.
Yeah, right.
And with people, it varies enormously. By the way, I mean, from place to place, but with people overseeing them or not, and the scope for litigation is almost infinite. So these lawsuits are already up and running. And one of the big things this year, consonant with the massive Trump emphasis on immigration, will be that a lot of voters have registered who aren't actually citizens.
Right.
Okay, and there's been a big Fugazi in Arizona, where it turned out that about 218,000 voters had been registered as voters without having shown their documentation.
Right.
And this, of course, is catnip.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
To the Republicans.
Yeah.
I genuinely think, having looked at it, it was just an error. and they're doing their best to correct it. And I suspect they will have corrected it by November the 5th. But
but the Republican stories,
they'll say, you see, they're flooding
it with
exactly.
Yeah.
And more than that, all of these lawsuits, even if they don't prevail, and most of them, if not all of them, won't prevail, they muddy the waters, because what Trump will want, if we assume, let's assume just as a thought experiment that Harris wins, Trump will instantly cry foul. And the problem is that he's been saying that ever since he announced his candidacy.
Yeah.
And the phrase "too big to rig." We need to win too big to rig. So in other words, you work on the assumption that it's being rigged. And so between November the 5th and January the 6th, that's the danger hour.
Yes. Well, I mean, to that point, what is the... And this sounds like a stupid question, but maybe there's some sort of sense from where it's coming from. What is worse, Trump winning or Kamala Harris winning, but only just? If Trump wins, right, and forgive me, listener, because I'm thinking aloud here. Trump wins. It's bad news, right?
It is a bit, yeah.
But he's got 4 years.
Yes.
He can't run a second time.
Yes.
But if Kamala Harris wins, but in circumstances that Trump has, with some validity in the eyes of lots and lots of people who are already angry and tense and ready to go, right? And the trigger, or almost literally, it'll be a very hair trigger for people's temperaments.
It will.
And you sort of play it forward 10 years, not 4 years.
Yes.
You almost sort of wonder, maybe you would swerve a catastrophe if Trump just won for 4 years.
I think that would be right if it weren't for the fact that, he's planning to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants, get out of Ukraine.
I've just done and again, I'm not doing the everybody you hate is Hitler, right?
Yes.
But I did once pick up a book which was called, it was written in 1933, and the title of it was Hitler the Pawn.
Yeah.
And the entire thesis was that it's okay, don't worry, he'll come, but he'll go, and we'll get over it and we'll move on.
Yes.
And I think with some people you can say that, but there are some people who are determined enough that you can't.
We tested the destruction in his first term, and hopefully only term.
Yeah.
There was, it didn't matter if you put people like John Kelly or Mattis or Tillerson around him, he was still crazy, know. And this time, and this is, by the way, one of the reasons that Vance wouldn't say that Trump lost in 2020, because there is more or less a loyalty oath now in his circle that you cannot say he lost in 2020. That is the unsayable thing.
Yeah.
So the problem, I agree with you, there's a sort of attractive logic, I'll just let him have a term, but which in the case of many presidents, I mean, let's say Mitt Romney had won in 2012, instead of Obama. Well, I would have preferred Obama to win, but as he did. But
Mitt Romney wasn't going to destroy America.
Mitt Romney wasn't, do the equivalent of pulling out of Ukraine, doing God knows what, by the way, in the Middle East. I mean, we really don't want Trump marching into this situation.
Will the recent events in Israel and the increased tensions, obviously, between Israel and Iran, is there a chance that plays into Trump's hands? Because Trump's got this narrative that he's the global peacemaker.
Well, it was very interesting. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who was very active behind the scenes in the first administration and has been largely off the scene, did a long post on X the other day, which suggested to me, maybe you're being lined up to come back.
Right.
Which was very much about how, a second Trump administration could bring peace rapidly to the area. And my concern with specific regard to the Middle East is that he has no interest in diplomacy at all, other than that which serves his interest. I was going to say America's, but no, his interest.
Yeah.
And I genuinely fear for him being involved in such a complex regional conflict, because it's not just Israel-Gaza. It's Hezbollah, but it's Lebanon as well.
Yeah.
It's Iran. and the Houthis again, and God knows what this means for the international network of terror that Iran sponsors. So the variables, it is six-dimensional chess.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine the sort of bulldog Trump just marching in and saying, phoning up the Ayatollah and saying, I'm going to nuke you unless you
back it in.
Which he might just be bluffing, but who knows?
Yeah.
So the problem is that the world is in a situation where we can't afford a term of Trump. So to go back to the kind of that November the 5th to January the 6th period, the big card that the sort of sane world has to play, we're assuming here that Harris has just edged it, okay, is that the Democrats are in the White House. Because the problem in 2021 was that the Republicans were.
That's right, yeah.
And they were able to, Trump was sitting in the White House and not doing very much.
Yeah.
Whereas Biden will still be president and he'll be able to mobilize the National Guard. And frankly, if I was him, and, I don't know what they've got planned, I do know that, they are planning very, very significant security measures. I would lock down Washington.
This is more like fucking Caracas.
I know. But I would, I just wouldn't take a chance.
Yeah.
I would lock down Washington between certain dates because the militias that were active in 2021, a lot of the key protagonists are in prison. About 500 were sent to jail, but the movement has metastasized and there are all sorts of new groups, and they're all, as you would expect, very active on Facebook and Telegram and so on, and of course they're all heavily armed. And what you saw in the Springfield, Ohio little case study with the madness about pet-eating Haitians, there were Proud Boys and Active Club people turning up, and this felt horribly like a drill.
Yeah.
And it is, one hopes that none of this happens. But America is on such an edge.
Yeah, it feels closer to that Alex Garland film, Civil War. It feels closer to that than it does to, the presidential races we grew up watching, doesn't it?
It does. And I think, while I was watching the Walz Vance debate, I sort of was thinking about the last year or so, and it hit me that here's this guy, Trump, who's been around for 9 years, 34 felony counts he's guilty of, awaiting imprisonment, twice impeached, found liable for sexual assault, indicted for an electoral subversion. That case is currently awaiting trial. He's still within sight of victory.
It's amazing.
And I don't know what you think. I mean, it's given me, it's not humbling because we're not there. But when it's over, whatever happens, even if he loses, I think the progressive side of the street around the world has to have a long, hard look at itself.
Well, you know who I blame, right?
Go on.
President Barack Obama. And I'll tell you why.
That's interesting.
I'll tell you why. And it goes back to a single 5-minute riff at the Washington Correspondents' dinner where he humiliated and mocked him. Trump.
Right.
And you look back now, and I bet you Obama wouldn't dare look at that video because he would cringe within himself.
With reason.
Because he mocked and belittled him and humiliated Trump.
Yeah.
And Trump was forced to sit there and eat it.
Yeah.
And you go back, and it was about the absurdity of Donald Trump and everything he represented. And as much as I think Obama obviously is an amazing force, but within that 5 minutes, I think he let himself down, and because it wasn't prescient enough to see that Trump represented something that he couldn't tap into, because he represented something altogether different. But he missed a bigger picture there.
And I think that it does trouble me that this is 9 years on, and we're really no nearer to finding the formula, about the magic formula about how to not just beat Trump but to destroy him.
Yeah, but isn't that, Matt, because we're not talking about, in truth, we're not talking about beating Trump and destroying Donald Trump. We're talking about how do we beat the causes of Donald Trump.
But that's my whole point, is that's what I mean really is that, I mean, one thing Obama got right was he was very early to say, trust me, Trump is a symptom, not a cause.
Yeah.
You know, and we look around the world, we look at reform, we look at the AfD, we look at what happened in Austria, we look at, you know, what's going on in France, you know, still at the danger of a Le Pen presidency. The direction of travel is very, very clear, and we are not winning. No. And I suppose what I really mean is that I really hope that Harris wins, and I think, I don't know whether she'll be a brilliant president, but she'll clearly not be totally deranged and plunge the world into, you know, total disorder, pull America out, stop aiding Ukraine. Her actions in the Middle East, I suspect, may be a bit too pro-Israel for some people's liking, but they won't be just pro-Israel. You know, she's definitely mindful of the Palestinian plight. I mean, there's no question about that. She'll be a normal president, right? Yeah. But I suppose really what I'm saying is, if on November the 6th we all dancing around like the Ewoks at the end of Star Wars saying, hooray, the Empire has fallen, right? No, you know, there needs to be a huge autopsy on how this has happened, and not just in America. Yeah. Because I don't, you know, we've been talking about Starmer quite a lot. Whatever else you say about Starmer, clearly he is not the answer. You know, he may be a perfectly serviceable prime minister in due course. I don't know. But I think you'd be pushing it if you said Starmer is the answer to this wave of right-wing populism that is kind of taking over it's kind of infected the system now in a deep way. You know, so there may be a remission in America, but it's not going away. You know, America is fundamentally polarized. We've got a month to go, and still, and the Democrats have changed their nominee, and still it's a dead heat with a man who, how much more discredited could he be? And what does it say about politics full stop in the free world that someone like him, with his, you know, record of disgrace and criminality, is within sight of a second term? And I just think, I don't want to be too dark about it, but I do think that if there's a terrible error on the progressive side, it's this sort of pendulum belief. Everything will be, there's a cycle. The pendulum will swing back. It'll be fine. And of course, if she wins, it'll be a matter for huge celebration. But then the hard work begins.
I think you're absolutely right that this is not cyclical. This is we've moved into a new era of politics. And the foundation of the new era of politics is in social media. That's where it's to be found, and that's where the challenge has to be met, is how do you make sense of social media? How do you give people the power to use social media in a constructive way and not just ever increasing spiral of polarization?
And also you acknowledge on the progressive side that there are huge numbers of people who consider themselves to have been really cheated by globalization.
100%.
You know, and they don't feel that anyone is listening to them. And so these numbskulls like Trump and Farage stand up and throw hate and slogans at them, and they say, well, at least you're listening. In 2015-16, we were all caught off guard by Trump and Brexit, and that was a big shame, but it was at least, you know, it was new. But it isn't new now, and we should be further along the path of finding an answer than we are.
Agreed. All right, well, I hope people have enjoyed that conversation. There's going to be more.
And I hope she wins, by the way. I'm rooting for her. I want it to work out.
But I think there may be trouble ahead.
There's structural trouble ahead, you know, at least. Join us, please, on Sunday for our regular Q&A. And if you've got any questions or any feedback, just fire that into this email. It's 2matts@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS, @tnepublishing.com. Do subscribe to The New European. It's cheap as chips. It supports great independent journalism, and it helps pay the bills for this podcast. So if you enjoy this podcast, then do your bit and subscribe to The New European. You get a free newspaper delivered when you do. What more could you ask?
What more could one ask for? It costs just £2 a week for the newspaper, and you get a bollocks to Brexit passport cover.
Your cup runneth over, really.
It really does. And you'll get that at theneweuropean.co.uk patreon.com/2matts. That's the number 2, MATTS. There's a link in the show notes. Thanks as ever to our production team at Rethink Audio, led by Ollie Peart this week. And until Sunday,
it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.